A couple of days ago we were as far south as Abu Simbel. Now we've come all the way back up again to the Mediterranean coast, to the city of Alexandria, a city that for no specific reason I've just kind of always wanted to come to. This city is of course named after Alexander the Great. He stumbled across it in 331 BC, back when it was just a small fishing town, and he decided, one way or another, that this needs to be a really massive, flashy city worthy of immortalising his name, and so he went about starting construction. It does have a slightly Mediterranean feel about it. It's even got its own tram system, which, by the way, was the first tram system in Africa. And while there's plenty to be looking at, and it is, well, it's a little bit less manic than Cairo, a little bit, I'm still going to bring down the pace slightly, just, reduce tempo a little bit and go for a leisurely stroll around Alexandria. And to get us started for the day, this behind me is the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. There was once upon a time the Great Library at Alexandria. This isn't it. That old one was actually destroyed. In fact, it was destroyed twice, just in case once wasn't enough. This one went up in 2002 as a long overdue replacement for the old one. This big European looking structure is a monument to the unknown soldier and is built in memory of those, unknown soldiers that have lost their lives defending their country. Around here we've got a nice little green park thing and a statue of a bloke called Muhammad Ali Pasha. He was an Albanian and he was in charge of Egypt from 1808 to 1845, and nowadays he's credited as being the father of modern Egypt, even though we spoke no Arabic, spoke very little Turkish, and was just some Albanian chap that sent loads of people here to sort some stuff out. As we walk down a little alleyway, the whole city just grows much quieter and we stumble across St. Catherine's Church. This was built in the middle of the 19th century and it's just so peaceful in here. And then as we walk out of St. Catherine's, we've got this one tucked away down a little street. No idea what it's called, but a tidy little church. Behind me we have what is renowned as one of the most beautiful mosques in the whole country. This is Sidi Morsi Abu Al-Abbas Mosque in Alexandria, and it's a good one. Even behind this main big bit, it's got this round the corner as well. Pretty meaty one. As you can see, it's not small, and it's also quite important because there is a Sufi buried in there, the patron saint of fishermen. As we get to the end of the Corniche, a 20-kilometre stretch of promenade that spans the whole city, we get to this, the Citadel of Kat Bay. This is a very nicely kept 15th century fortress built by, Sultan Kat Bay, hence the name, and it offers some absolutely mint views over the Mediterranean and the city. Inside is very, fortressy, but it has got a mosque in here, which happens to be the second oldest mosque in Alexandria. And I believe if we go up these enormous stairs, one would assume it takes us to the top. Well, we've made it however high this is. That's where we shoot the bad guys on boats. Oh, this one's good one. It's not a bad view at all, is it? One of the 7 ancient wonders of the world was the lighthouse at Alexandria, and like I said in the Cairo video, only the Giza pyramids actually remain from that list, so this is long gone as well. But what's interesting is this citadel is built on the exact site that lighthouse was, and some people reckon that a lot of the stones from that lighthouse were used to actually build this. Each floor in this citadel's got a different layout and a different purpose. So this top one, the 3rd floor, has loads of little square rooms that would have been used to watch out for the baddies. This 2nd floor is much more spacious. It has 4 passages. These were used for meetings between soldiers and such. And then as we get down to the bottom one, this is where we find the mosque again and other functional rooms. And then as you step outside, you're absolutely blinded. But you get to the big courtyard, which essentially built a whole second line of defence. This would have been built quite a bit later, and all these rooms along the side were used as army barracks. And then we have the complete structure. My feet are starting to hurt, boys. Done 70 miles in the past 6 days. I'm not used to it. Now in a part of the city that in 1960 was about to have a big government building put on top of it, but as they were digging the foundations, they found something. Do you want to see what it was? They just so happened to stumble across a 4th century Roman amphitheater, and they were literally about to just plonk something on top of it. This is in an area of the city called Kom El Deka, which means in Arabic hill of sand or hill of rubble or whatever. And it was so called because at the start of the 20th century, some bloke saw big piles of stuff everywhere from digging out canals and stuff like that, that he just got called that. And it just so happens that under that pile of rubble and sand was this. Originally, these pillars would have made a roof, there would have been a dome over it. There's quite a few of these pillars down here. These are actually granite pillars from Aswan. This is all European marble. However, a lot of the other stuff, like the roof and all the other decorations this would have had, were destroyed in an earthquake that hit Alexandria in the 6th century AD. The same earthquake that destroyed the lighthouse that isn't there anymore, that was one of the ancient wonders of the world, destroyed that as well. But all this survived. This would have seated about 600 people, they reckon. And would have been used for a couple of hundred years from, well, as soon as it was built until the earthquake hit and just wrecked everything. An interesting thing about this is because of its small size, you might have seen pictures of amphitheatres at some point, and they're normally massive, they can fit thousands of people. Because this one only fits, let's say 600, it's kind of proof, apparently, that this was either for important people coming to meet or for only very private shows being shown. Given the size of Alexandria, the city, and how small its single Roman theatre was, yeah, makes it sound like it could have been quite an important one. What's also interesting is, well, the theatre thing is over there, and all down here, we've got loads of other rooms. In each of these rooms, you've got these little steps, presumably seats, that hold 20 to 30 people. And what they actually are is a series of 22 lecture halls for students used from the 5th to the 7th century AD, and I believe that's where all these columns would have been put in as well. This also would have been one massive roofed structure. What I think's mad is how even as late as 1960 they were about to just dig up loads of stuff and then build something on it in a country like Egypt, where you'd think, you know, they've found plenty of stuff to indicate it's quite an old country. You'd think they'd probably check first. All of this whole area would have been Roman baths. This complex is getting a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. While we're wandering around this, it seems like a good time to elaborate on 2 points I made earlier, just to explain how it all kind of went down. So, Alexander the Great took over 331 BC. His idea was to take over the whole world. Unfortunately, about 8 years later, he died, so that didn't go very well, didn't last very long, and a guy called Ptolemy took over. And that began what is known as the Ptolemaic era, a period in which it was an incredibly prosperous time for Alexandria because of its location near the Red Sea and near the Mediterranean. It was an incredibly good trade centre, and it all went very well. In fact, it was only beaten to the most important city of that time by Rome, so it was a pretty big deal back then. Our mate Alex may not have lived to see it, but his city, it made it. All of these walled bits, by the way, are all remnants of old Roman houses that were discovered. And in here, we can see the best preserved one. This best preserved one is known as the Villa of the Birds because, well, it's got birds on it. This is all the original mosaic flooring. There's also this bad boy up here, and this was all laid at the time that Hadrian was in charge in the 2nd century AD. So to return to the second point I was on about, which is the library. So the library was built during Ptolemy's time, and it was an absolutely mythical place. It was the biggest library in the entire universe, and it housed everything. Estimates reckon they kept up to 700,000 books there, and the way they acquired them was either they went to a market and they bought them, or they had a whole section called From the Ships. And whenever the ships would come into the harbour to trade or to travel or do anything, they would confiscate all the books from the ships, make a copy of them, and then give the copy back to the ship, and they keep the original. So confiscation was a big method of building that, the library. However, like I said earlier, it was destroyed not once but twice. So the first time, Julius Caesar got all involved, got himself in the middle of this fight between Cleopatra and another Ptolemy, Ptolemy the 8th or something. Anyway, Julius Caesar's contribution to the whole scrap was just to set all the boats in the port on fire. For whatever reason, the library was originally housed near the port, and so the fire spread to the library, burnt everything down. Cheers, Julius Caesar, pal. Nice contribution, mate. That's not gone very well. Luckily though, Julius Caesar is not in total trouble because there is a second branch to the library, which is housed in a temple dedicated to the god Serapis. Then in 391 AD, another Roman gets involved. Theodosius, the bloke in charge at the time, condemns all places of worship, like pagan temples and stuff, just wants to destroy them all, so destroys that one on purpose this time, and there with it went the rest of the library. And that was about that. Just had an interesting interaction with a young guy who was asking me what I'm doing here. I said that, you know, I've been about everywhere. And he was like, well, why did you come to Alexandria? There's nothing here. And I can kind of get his point, because this is not a place that most people put on an itinerary. Except for the fact that most cruises go through it, and that's how a lot of people experience Egypt. But it's not really got any massive sites that you'd really go out your way to go and see. But I'm glad we've managed to squeeze it in, because I think it's been fairly interesting. It suited me that it's not quite as mad as Cairo. It suited me there's not been an awful lot to do, because it means I can just mope about and have a look at my own pace and not be darting about every 35 seconds. So I've had a pretty good time, and yeah, I'm glad I've managed to sandwich it between arriving on one bus in the morning and leaving on one overnight bus tonight, and it's going to kill me, but I'm glad we got to see it anyway. There is definitely less to do than in Cairo, for example, but like I said, it's not a bad thing at all for me today. I'm chilling. But that is Alexandria, and the next time you'll see me, I'll be a long way from here and probably quite tired. Cheers boys, see you in a bit.